tonight. Christine, you've got the floor. Thank you. I would like to look back on this first day of our symposium. We've had a variety of presentations today, and for a synthesis, of course, you might want to use different tools. The mixer to develop a bouillabaisse, then a hopper, and the scissors. I opted for the scissors and chose some clips from the individual technical presentations. And this will be a kind of collage to you. Armin Peter showed that the measures taken and research focused for a long time on long-distance migrants, and that short or medium-range distances had been underestimated or had hardly been taken into account. Time was another factor that was discussed. It turned out that migration takes place during the entire year and that targeted monitoring is necessary to understand migration much better. Franziska Schwarz and her colleague talked about the need for restoration or retrofitting of power plants in Switzerland, because the majority of existing fish ladders are functional only to a limited extent. It turned out that retrofitting and its funding is secured. They did underline that retrofitting or restoration takes many different stakeholders, and that success can only be achieved by cooperation between all stakeholders. Ms. Tamani presented the rock rams as an efficient measure against erosion and for the improvement of passability. She informed us about the dimensioning concept that is being developed so that we will have a very practice-oriented guideline. Passability of unstructured ramps is appropriate also for bullheads, that is for fish that are not strong swimmers. The next presentation by Leite and Petuzzi underlined that estuaries are a very unique habitat in rivers and in lakes. The relevance of estuaries is, however, very often underestimated, so they're very often not taken into account in technical measures, and therefore they are very often in a bad ecological status. So there is a considerable renaturalization potential with many synergies. Henrik Hufgaard reported in his presentation about the Geesthacht fish ladder and the new double slit pass. 10 times more fish were counted that were migrating upstream than in the bypass channel. He showed that for Potamodromus species, a specific time period for upstream migration can't be determined, and therefore we can't say that the most important time period during the year is the spawning time. The studies at Geesthacht showed that we need different monitoring methods that would lead to unique findings with respect to the migrating time and also the migrating distances. Stefan Heinl, in his presentation, talked about the new DWA sheet As a matter of fact, there's no longer a distinction between near natural or more technical, and that they would rather focus on the efficiency. Stefan Heimel underlined that the implementation of existing knowledge, but also of future knowledge, would be a great help. He also illustrated the learning process. He said, after the sheet is before the next new sheet. So we're always learning something, although we might have published the most recent findings. Stefan Schmutz, in his presentation, showed that Austria is primarily focusing on passability in revitalization measures. He also talked about the Austrian guideline, and there was a slip of her tongue, which was a bit funny in German, but that doesn't translate, I'm sorry. So the guideline is a support, but it's no panacea or recipe. Well, this happens when you keep typing and make changes in the short breaks. Stefan also talked about new approaches for downstream migration facilities. In the last presentation, Ted Castro-Santos talked about 3 very central phases for upstream and downstream migration: approach, entry, and passage. In any of these phases, time might get lost. Ted illustrated that environmental and operating conditions change in fish letters or fish facilities, and therefore the starting point might be always different for migratory fish. Adaptive management, as underlined by Ted, can be supported by appropriate software or statistical tools. Those were my conclusions. Thank you very much for a very, very interesting day, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow's conference. Thank you very much, and we'll meet outside again for